Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'll be talking about AZ-104 practice question and answers part 2, and we'll be continuing this series. So I have already posted a video for part 1, AZ-104 practice question and answers. So you can have a look at that video as well. I'll leave the link in the description box. So without any further ado, let's get started with the questions. So our question number 11, in continuation with our part 1, over there I covered 10 questions in total. So in question number 11, it says your company has an Azure Active Directory, Azure AD tenant that is configured for hybrid coexistence with the on-premise Active Directory domain. You plan to deploy several new virtual machines in Azure. The VMs will have the same operating system and custom software requirements. You configure a reference VM in the on premise virtual environment. You then generalize the VM to create an image. You need to upload the image to Azure to ensure that it is available for selection when you create the new Azure VMs. Which PowerShell CMDlets should you use? So you are given all these options and you are given a problem statement for which one of these options will be the one that suffice. So your options are A, add AZVM, B, add AZVHD, C, add AZ image, then D, add AZ image data disk. Now let's look into the correct answer, and the correct answer is B, add AZVHD. And the explanation for this answer is to upload a generalized VD image to Azure, you should use the add AZVHD CMDlet to copy the VHD file of your generalized VM to Azure storage. Once the VHD is in Azure storage, you can create a managed image from it. Now let's look into the next question, question number 12. Question number 12, and question number 12 says your company has a Microsoft Azure subscription. The company has data centers in Los Angeles and New York. You are configuring the two data centers as geo cluster sites for site resiliency. You need to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option. So you have the following data storage requirements. So these are the requirements when you're going to store your data, and you have to recommend an Azure storage redundancy option, so which should satisfy all these storage requirements. So your storage requirements are: data must be stored on multiple nodes, data must be stored on nodes in separate geographic locations, data can be read from the secondary location as well as from the primary location. Which of the following Azure stored redundancy options should you recommend? And your options are: A, geo redundant storage; B, read only geo redundant storage; C, zone redundant storage; and D, locally redundant storage. And the correct answer is B, which is read only geo redundant storage. It allows you to have higher read availability for your storage account by providing read only access to the data replicated to the secondary location. Once you enable this feature, the secondary location may be used to achieve higher availability in the event the data is not available in the primary regions. So it satisfied the requirements that are being mentioned in our question. Now let's look into the next question, question number 13. So the question is included in a number of questions that depicts the identical setup. However, every question has a distinctive result. So establish if the solution satisfies the requirements. Your company has an Azure subscription that includes a storage account, a resource group, a blob container, and a file share. A colleague named John Ross makes use of a solitary Azure Resource Manager ARM template, ARM template to deploy a virtual machine and an additional Azure storage account. You want to review the ARM template that was used by John Ross. Solution: you access the virtual machine blade. Does the solution meet the requirement? So your options are A and B, which is yes and no. And then the correct answer is B, no, it does not satisfies the requirement. So accessing the virtual machine blade will allow you to see the information and settings related to virtual machines, but it will not provide you with the access to the ARM template that was used to deploy the resources, including the additional Azure storage account. So that is the reason it does not, the solution that is being provided, it does not satisfies the requirement of the question. Now let's look into the next question, which will be in continuation to this particular question, question number 14. So now the same question. Your company has an Azure subscription that includes a storage account, a source group, and a blob container and a file share. And a colleague named John Ross makes use of solitary ARM template to deploy a virtual machine and an additional Azure storage account. You want to review the ARM template that was used by John Ross. Solution: you access the resource group blade. Does the solution meet the requirement? Let's see the answer. The answer is yes, it meets the requirement. So, to review the ARM template that John Ross used to deploy the virtual machine and additional Azure storage account, you would typically need to access the Azure resource group associated with these resources. You can go to the Azure portal, navigate to the resource group that contains these resources, and then access the template section or the automation script section to view and download the ARM template and its parameters. Now, question number 15. So it is the same question, but the solution that is given over here is you access the container blade and it is asking whether it satisfies or not. So the answer is no, because as we saw in the previous question, the solution was resource group blade. So resource group blade will be satisfying the condition that is mentioned in this particular question, and it will be allowing to review the ARM template that was used by John Ross. Now let's look into the next question, question number 16. So your company has three virtual machines that are included in an availability set. You try to resize one of the VMs, which returns an allocation failure message. It is imperative that the VM is resized. Which of the following actions should you take? And your options are: A, you should only stop one of the VMs; B, you should stop two of the VMs; C, you should stop all three VMs; and D, you should remove the necessary VM from the availability set. So, what could be the probable solution for this particular question? And the answer is C. You should stop all the three VMs. So, if the VM you wish to resize is part of an availability set, then you must stop all VMs in the availability set before changing the size of any VM in the availability set. The reason all VMs in the availability set must be stopped before performing the resize operation to a size that requires different hardware is that running all VMs in the availability set must be using the same physical hardware cluster. So that is the reason you should first stop the VMs and then you should resize the VM. So therefore, if a change of physical hardware cluster is required to change the VM size, then all the VMs must first be stopped and then restarted one by one to a different physical hardware clusters. And I'll leave the link in the description box for the references, and you can look into the references in order to gain more in-depth understanding of this particular question answer. Now let's look into question number 17. So you have an Azure virtual machine that has a single data disk. You have been tasked with attaching this data disk to another Azure VM. You need to make sure that your strategy allows for the virtual machines to be offline for the least amount of time possible. Which of the following is the action you should take first? And the options are: A, stop the VM that includes the data disk; B, stop the VM that the data disk must be attached to; C, detach the data disk; D, delete the VM that includes the data disk. Now let's look into the correct answer. And the correct answer is A. And these are the references. You can go through the references. So basically, what you have to do is you have to stop the VM that includes the data disk, and then you can make the that is the action that needs to be performed first. And a better explanation that is being written on the slide is, you can go through the explanation, or let me explain the steps that one would take. So the first thing is, to minimize the amount of downtime for the virtual machines, you should take the following steps in the order listed. So first is stop the VM that includes the data disk. Second is detach the data disk. Third is attach the data disk to the target VM. And finally, the correct answer is stop the VM that includes the data disk. So that will be the first option, or the first step that you have to take in order to minimize the amount of downtime for the virtual machines. So now let's look into the next question, question number 18. So your company has an Azure subscription. You need to deploy a number of Azure virtual machines using Azure Resource Manager templates. You have been informed that the VMs will be included in a single availability set. You are required to make sure that the ARM template you configure allows for as many VMs as possible to remain accessible in the event of fabric failure or maintenance. Which of the following is the value that you should configure for the platform fault domain count property? So the options are A 10, B 30, C minimum value, and D maximum value. And the correct answer is D, which is maximum value. The number of fault domains for managed availability set varies by region, either 2 or 3 per region. Now let's look into the next question, question number 19. So your company has an Azure subscription. You need to deploy a number of Azure virtual machines using ARM templates. You have been informed that the VMs will be included in a single availability set. You are required to make sure that the ARM template you configure allows for as many VMs as possible to remain accessible in the event of fabric failure or maintenance. Which of the following is a value that you should configure for the platform update domain count property? And the options are A10, B20, C30, and D40. And the correct answer is B, which is 20. So each virtual machine in your availability set is assigned an updated domain and a fault domain by underline Azure platform. For a given availability set, 5 non-user configurable update domains are assigned by default. So 20 is the correct answer for it. And for reference, I will leave the link in the description box of this particular video. Now let's look into the next question, question number 20. So this question, it says your company has an Azure Active Directory tenant that is configured for hybrid coexistence with the on-premises Active Directory domain. The on-premises virtual environment consists of virtual machines running on Windows Server 2012 R2 Hyper-V host servers. You have created some PowerShell scripts to automate the configuration of newly created VMs. You plan to create several new VMs. You need a solution that ensures the scripts are run on the new VMs. Which of the following is the best solution? And the options are A. Configure a setup complete.cmd batch file in the win directory slash setup slash scripts directory. Then B. Configure a group policy object to run the scripts as logon scripts. Option C. Configure a group policy object to run the scripts as a startup scripts. Option D. Place the scripts in a new virtual hard disk. Now let's look into the correct answer. The correct answer is A. Configure a setup complete .cmd batch file in the given directory. So after you deploy a VM, you typically need to make some changes before it's ready for use. This is something you can do manually, or you could use remote PowerShell to automate the configuration of a VM after deployment, for example. But now there's a third alternative available, allowing you customize your VM, the custom script extension. Okay, and I will leave the references. You can check out the references for the explanation of these answers. And I hope you like the video. That's it for today. And please subscribe to my channel and give it a thumbs up. Thank you. Bye bye.